All right, UPSC aspirants, welcome back for part 2 of our March 4th deep dive into current affairs. You know how this works. We might be revisiting some topics from previous episodes, but remember, repetition is your best friend when it comes to those exams. So get ready, because today we're going to cover some global health concerns, touch upon a recent study on floods in high mountain Asia, and then delve into the intricacies of poverty measurement in India. Oh, and before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our deep dives.
Sounds like we've got a packed agenda today. I'm ready when you are.
Let's dive right in. So, we've all been hearing a lot about obesity in the news lately, and it's not just a passing trend. The Prime Minister recently brought it up, highlighting the global rise of obesity. Did you know that a staggering 1 in 8 people worldwide are now considered obese? And even more alarming is the fact that cases among children and adolescents have quadrupled.
It's a concerning trend, and it's definitely something that demands our attention, especially as future policymakers. The World Health Organization defines obesity as having a body mass index, or BMI, of 30 or above, and the consequences go far beyond just weight. We're talking increased risks of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and even certain types of cancer.
That's a pretty sobering list. So
Yeah.
where does India stand in all of this?
Well, the National Family Health Survey, or NFHS-5, which covers the years 2019 to 2021, shows that around 24% of women and 23% of men in India are either overweight or obese. What's even more concerning is the jump in child overweight rates. Imagine this: the percentage of overweight children under 5 went from 2.1% to 3.4% in just a few years.
That's a huge jump. What's causing this rise in obesity, especially in a country as diverse as India? It can't be just one thing, right?
Exactly. There's no single answer. But if we look at the broader picture, some patterns emerge. One factor is the shift towards what we call high-calorie, low-nutrient diets. Think about it. Processed foods, sugary drinks, those tempting packaged snacks, they're everywhere these days. And then there's the issue of increasingly sedentary lifestyles. We're spending more and more time sitting in front of computers, televisions, and our phones. This combination of less physical activity and more calorie-dense foods is a recipe for weight gain.
It makes you think even simple things like the Prime Minister's call to reduce edible oil consumption by 10%. It's not just about cutting calories, it's a nudge towards a healthier lifestyle. But for our UPSC aspirants listening in, how does all of this tie into your exam prep?
Think about it this way. Obesity touches upon several themes relevant to the UPSC syllabus. It connects to public health policies, socioeconomic inequalities, the impact of globalization on food choices, and even environmental sustainability, if you consider the carbon footprint of our food systems. So when you're studying, think broadly, connect these seemingly disparate issues, and you'll start to see the bigger picture, which is what the UPSC examiners are looking for.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic. Flooding in high mountain Asia. This one hits close to home for India and the entire Asian region. A recent study confirmed what scientists have been warning about for a while now. Climate change is causing the frequency of floods in this region to rise at an alarming rate.
And it's not just about more frequent floods, it's about the unpredictability. The study found that while most floods still occur during the monsoon season, there's a growing number happening outside these typical periods. Imagine trying to prepare for a flood when it's not even supposed to be flood season.
That's got to be incredibly challenging. But before we go further, for our listeners who might not be familiar with high mountain Asia, can you give us a quick overview?
Absolutely. High mountain Asia, sometimes called the Asian Water Tower, is like a giant reservoir of frozen water. Think of it as a network of towering mountain ranges like the Himalayas, Karakoram, and Hindu Kush, all surrounding the Tibetan Plateau. This region feeds 10 major rivers that provide water for over 2 billion people. It also plays a huge role in regulating weather patterns and supporting a vast array of plants and animals.
So basically a region of critical importance for a huge chunk of the world's population. Back to the floods. The study talked about different types of floods affecting high mountain Asia. Can you break that down for us?
Yes, they categorize them into 4 main types. The most impactful ones are rain or pluvial floods triggered by extreme rainfall and glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOFs, which happen when melting glaciers or landslides cause glacial lakes to breach. We've seen devastating GLFs in the Himalayas in recent years, and they're becoming increasingly common. Now, there are 2 other types: snowmelt-induced floods and landslide-dammed lake outburst floods, or LLOS, but those are less frequent compared to the first 2.
So different types of floods all linked to climate change and all posing significant risks. What did the study recommend in terms of solutions?
The study emphasized real-time flood monitoring, especially in vulnerable valleys. Think of it as a high-tech early warning system that can detect and track floods as they happen. They also stressed the need for international cooperation. These mountain ranges span across multiple countries, so sharing data about weather patterns and water levels is crucial for a coordinated response finally. And this is important. The study strongly advocated for community-based mitigation efforts. That means empowering local communities to build protective infrastructure, set up their own early warning systems, and have solid evacuation plans.
That's a great example of how technology, international collaboration, and local knowledge can come together to tackle a complex issue like climate change-induced flooding.
Now shifting gears a bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that's fundamental to understanding India's social and economic landscape, poverty measurement. This is where your data analysis skills come in, which, as you know, are crucial for the UPSC. So there's been a lot of discussion lately about whether our current methods of measuring poverty are actually outdated and don't accurately reflect the reality on the ground. A recent study really got people thinking about this.
Okay, let's unpack this. What did this study find that was so thought-provoking?
Well, they analyzed data from the 2022-24 Household Consumer Expenditure Survey and compared it to data from a decade earlier. One of the most striking findings was the dramatic drop in the poverty headcount ratio. It went from about 12% in 2011-12 to just 1% in 2023-24. It seems like incredible progress, right? But there's more to the story.
I have a feeling you're about to tell me there's a catch.
You know me too well. The study also found that while overall poverty decreased, the poorest households actually experienced much higher growth in their spending compared to wealthier households. This challenges the assumption that economic growth always benefits the rich more than the poor. And here's where it gets really interesting. The study argues that the official poverty lines we use in India, the Tendulkar and Rangarajan lines, are outdated. They don't accurately capture how people's consumption patterns and needs have changed over time.
So what's the solution if these existing poverty lines aren't doing the job? What are the alternatives?
The study proposes two new ways to measure poverty. The first is a relative poverty line based on the spending habits of the bottom 33% of the population. Instead of using a fixed poverty line, this one would adjust automatically as the economy grows, giving us a more dynamic picture.
Okay, I see how that could be more responsive to real-world changes. What's the second proposal?
The second one is based on income and draws inspiration from the European model in Europe. If you earn less than 60% of the median income, you're considered to be living in poverty, applying this method to India. The study found that around 16.5% of the population would fall below this income-based poverty line.
So we've got two new potential poverty lines, each with its own way of looking at the problem. But why should our listeners care about these seemingly technical details? How does this connect to their UPSC goals?
These new poverty lines aren't just about number crunching. They represent a fundamental shift in how we think about and measure poverty. They challenge us to move beyond static measures and embrace a more nuanced perspective. And for you, the UPSC aspirants, this means understanding the nuances of these different approaches you need to be able to analyze data, identify trends, and question assumptions. Because remember, this isn't just an academic exercise. These debates about poverty measurement have real-world implications for policy decisions and social justice in India.
It's a good reminder that the UPSC exam is all about making those connections and showing you can think critically about complex issues. And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
That was a great discussion on poverty measurement. It really highlights how seemingly technical details can have a big impact on policy decisions and people's lives.
Exactly. And that's what makes preparing for the UPSC so fascinating. You have to be able to connect the dots between all these different areas. Okay, ready to tackle our next topic? It's one that always seems to come up in the UPSC judicial overreach.
Always a hot-button issue. The case that's been making headlines recently is the Mansingh Verma case. Basically, the Allahabad High Court ordered the Narcotics Control Bureau to compensate someone for what they considered wrongful confinement, but then the Supreme Court stepped in and overturned the High Court's decision.
Why did the Supreme Court overturn the High Court's order? Was it just a difference of opinion?
Not quite. The Supreme Court felt that the High Court had overstepped its boundaries. They argued that the Code of Criminal Procedure doesn't actually give courts the authority to grant compensation in cases like this. They basically said the High Court was venturing into territory that's usually handled by other branches of government.
The classic separation of powers debate. It's like a constant tug of war between the judiciary's role in upholding rights and the principle of respecting the boundaries between different parts of the government.
Exactly, and that's why this case is so important for UPSC aspirants to understand. You need to be able to analyze cases like this, identify the legal principles at play, and present arguments both for and against judicial intervention. Remember, the exam is not just about knowing the law. It's about showing you understand how it's applied and interpreted in real-world situations.
Okay, let's switch gears now and talk about something a little more heartwarming. Project Lion. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are animal lovers, and this project has been getting a lot of attention lately. The government just approved a bunch of funding to boost lion conservation efforts in India.
It's definitely a win for wildlife conservation. Project Lion was launched back in 2020 with the goal of securing the future of Asiatic lions. It involves a multi-pronged approach, improving their habitats, using high-tech monitoring tools like radio collars and cameras, and even setting up a National Referral Centre for Wildlife, or NRCW, in Gujarat's Junagadh district.
I remember reading about that. What will the NRCW actually do?
The NRCW will be like a disease detective for wildlife, especially focusing on diseases that can spread from animals to humans. It'll be tasked with tracking outbreaks, developing prevention strategies, and making sure we're prepared to respond quickly and effectively if something like the 2020 babesiosis outbreak in Gurs National Park were to happen again. Remember, that outbreak killed 23 lions, which was a huge setback for conservation efforts.
It's like a reminder that even in protected areas, wildlife faces threats, and the NRCW will be at the forefront of protecting both animal and human health. But back to Project Lion, what are some of the other initiatives it involves?
One of the key goals is to expand lion habitats beyond Gur National Park. They're looking at areas like the Barda Wildlife Sanctuary to create what they're calling second homes for lions, giving them more space to roam and thrive. There's also a big focus on community engagement, recognizing that local communities play a crucial role in conservation efforts.
It's great to see this kind of comprehensive approach to conservation. And just for our listeners who might not be lion experts, can you give us a quick overview of their conservation status?
Asiatic lions are currently classified as vulnerable on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List, which means they're facing a high risk of extinction in the wild. They're only found in India, primarily in Gujarat's Gir forest, and they're protected under India's Wildlife Protection Act.
So Project Lion is a crucial step towards ensuring their survival.
Okay.
Ready for a change of scenery? Let's head to Ahmedabad, which is making quite a name for itself in the fight against climate change. They've actually become the first city in India to have a separate climate chapter in their budget.
It's a pretty bold move, and it shows that they're serious about addressing climate change at the local level. What's interesting is that they've dedicated a significant chunk of their budget, a whole 1/3, to climate action initiatives. That's a big commitment.
And what exactly are they planning to do with all that money?
Their main focus is implementing what they're calling the Net Zero Climate Resilient City Action Plan. Think of it as their roadmap to becoming a city that can withstand the impacts of climate change while also minimizing its own contribution to greenhouse gas emissions. Their ultimate goal is to achieve net zero emissions by 2070, which aligns with India's national target.
So they're setting an example for other cities to follow, taking concrete steps towards a sustainable future. But what exactly does climate budgeting mean? I think some of our listeners might be unfamiliar with that term.
It's a relatively new concept, but it's gaining traction worldwide. Climate budgeting basically means integrating climate change considerations into every aspect of financial planning and decision-making. It's about moving beyond just talking about climate change and actually allocating resources to address it.
So it's about putting money where your mouth is when it comes to climate action. But why is it so important, especially for cities?
Cities are on the front lines of climate change impacts. Think about it. They're home to dense populations, critical infrastructure, and often located in coastal areas, making them particularly vulnerable to things like rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and heat waves.
It's like they're facing a double whammy. They're more exposed to the risks, and they also contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions.
Exactly. So, by adopting climate budgeting, cities can make themselves more resilient to these impacts. It's also a way for them to track their progress, figure out where they need to invest more, and even come up with innovative ways to finance climate action projects.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all ties together for our UPSC aspirants.
Yeah.
How does this concept of climate budgeting fit into their exam prep?
Think about it this way. Climate change is no longer just an environmental issue. It's an economic issue, a social issue, a governance issue. It's intertwined with everything. So understanding concepts like climate budgeting, how cities are responding to climate change, and the role of local governments in implementing national policies, all of this is crucial for your UPSC preparation.
That's a great point. Climate change is definitely one of those topics that can pop up anywhere in the UPSC syllabus. Okay. Before we move on to our next topic, let's take a quick detour to address something that often causes confusion, even anxiety among voters. The EPIC number.
The elector's photo identification card number. The Election Commission recently had to issue a clarification about duplicate EPIC numbers, reassuring people that it doesn't mean there are duplicate or fake voters.
So how did this happen? Is there some kind of glitch in the system?
It's not really a glitch, more like a legacy issue. Before we had the Aeronet platform, each state managed its own electoral roll database, and sometimes they ended up assigning the same EPIC number to different people in different states.
Okay, so it was more of a coordination issue back then. What's Aeronet and how has it changed things?
Aeronet, or the Electoral Roll Management Platform, is basically a centralized online system for managing everything related to voter registration. Think of it as a massive digital database that has replaced those old, clunky manual systems. It helps ensure that every voter has a unique EPIC number, making the whole process much more transparent and secure.
So Aeronet has made our elections more robust and reliable. That's good to know. Now let's hop over to Mars for a minute. I read that scientists discovered a new mineral there. How cool is that?
It's always exciting when we discover something new about our celestial neighbors. This mineral called ferrihydrate forms in the presence of water. So finding it on Mars adds another piece to the puzzle that suggests Mars might have been a much wetter place in the past.
It's like a little time capsule hinting at a Martian past that was potentially very different from the dry, dusty landscape we see today. Speaking of different landscapes, let's head down to South America for a moment. Uruguay has a new president, Yamandu Orsi.
Uruguay is a fascinating country. It's the second smallest country in South America, known for its vast, fertile grasslands called the Pampas. It's also a relatively stable democracy in a region that's seen its share of political turmoil.
Okay, let's get back to the topic of health. The Indian Council of Medical Research, or ICMR, released a report linking high levels of selenium in wheat to hair loss. It's got to be concerning for a lot of people.
Selenium is actually an essential mineral that our bodies need in small amounts, but too much of it can be a bad thing. It can lead to a bunch of health issues, including hair loss. The problem is that selenium levels in soil can vary depending on where the wheat is grown, and if those levels too high, it ends up in the food we eat.
So it's a reminder of how interconnected everything is, the health of our soil, the food we grow, and ultimately our own health.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of sustainable agricultural practices and careful monitoring of what's going into our food supply. Speaking of interconnectedness, let's talk about the Lake Tanganyika Basin. It's a biodiversity hotspot in Africa, and there's a new initiative underway to protect it.
I'm all for protecting biodiversity. What's so special about this particular basin?
Well, it's home to Lake Tanganyika, one of the largest freshwater lakes in the world. It's incredibly rich in diverse aquatic life, but it's facing a lot of pressure from pollution, overfishing, and climate change. The good news is that the UN Environment Program is leading a collaborative effort to conserve the lake's biodiversity, manage the surrounding land sustainably, and improve water security in the region.
It sounds like a huge undertaking involving multiple countries working together to protect a shared resource. Now, let's take a quick trip to Andhra Pradesh. The Archaeological Survey of India has discovered some ancient rock art and inscriptions within the Sri Lankamaleswara Wildlife Sanctuary.
That's fascinating. This sanctuary is a hidden gem. It's a crucial water source for the region feeding the Pennar River. It's also incredibly biodiverse with a mix of different forest types and home to some rare and endangered species.
So this new discovery adds another layer of cultural and historical significance to an already important natural area.
Exactly. It's a reminder that these landscapes have been shaped by both natural and human forces over millennia.
Now let's shift our attention to a region that's been struggling with conflict for decades. Kurdistan. There's a glimmer of hope for peace, as the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, has declared a ceasefire with Turkey.
The PKK is a Kurdish group that has been fighting for autonomy for decades. They've been designated as a terrorist organization by Turkey and several Western countries, so this ceasefire is a potentially significant development.
For those who might not be familiar with the Kurdish struggle, can you give us a bit of context?
The Kurds are an ethnic group without a nation-state of their own. They're spread across Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria, and they've long faced discrimination and oppression. The PKK emerged in the 1980s with the goal of creating an independent Kurdish state within Turkey. This conflict has been going on for years, so this ceasefire, while fragile, offers a ray of hope for a more peaceful future.
Let's move on to something that's empowering women across India. Swavalambini.
Swavalambini, which means self-reliant, is a government program aimed at encouraging women's entrepreneurship. They're providing training resources and mentorship to women, particularly those in higher education institutions, to help them start their own businesses.
It sounds like a great initiative to foster economic independence and empower women. Finally, let's wrap up this section with a look at a recent military exercise Desert Hunt 2025.
This was a tri-service special forces exercise, meaning it involved elite units from all three branches of the Indian military, the Army, Navy, and Air Forces. They were testing their skills in a simulated combat environment, focusing on things like coordination, communication, and rapid response.
It's like a reminder that India is constantly working to enhance its military capabilities and prepare for any eventuality.
Exactly. And these exercises also serve as a deterrent, demonstrating India's strength and resolve. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive. Ready to move on to the final stretch?
Absolutely. We've still got a lot to discuss, from a new mineral discovered on Mars to the alarming decline of insect populations worldwide. So let's take a quick pause and then dive right back in. All right, UPSC enthusiasts, welcome back for the final leg of our March 4th Current Affairs deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground already, but we still got some fascinating topics to explore. Get ready to delve into the world of science, technology, and even a bit of social commentary.
Sounds like an exciting lineup. Let's jump right in.
Okay, let's start with something that sounds straight out of a science fiction movie. A new mineral discovered on Mars.
This discovery has really gotten the planetary science community buzzing. They've named it hemerythrite. And what makes it so unique is that it's never been found on Earth or any other celestial body. It's a silicate mineral, rich in iron and magnesium, and its structure suggests it formed in an ancient Martian lake or sea.
So it's like a little piece of Martian history revealing more about the planet's past.
Exactly. And remember, for UPSC, it's not just about the scientific discovery itself. It's about connecting it to broader themes. Think about the growing interest in space exploration, the potential for resource extraction from other planets, the ethical considerations of planetary protection. All of these are relevant for the exam.
That's a great point. It's all about seeing the bigger picture. Okay, let's bring our focus back to Earth for a moment and talk about something that's a bit concerning: the decline of insect populations worldwide. I know it might not seem like a big deal, but insects play a crucial role in our ecosystems.
You're absolutely right. Insects are essential for pollination, which is vital for food production. They also serve as a food source for countless other animals, and they play a key role in decomposing organic matter, keeping our ecosystems functioning properly. But sadly, insect populations are declining at an alarming rate.
What's driving this decline? It can't just be one thing, right?
It's a complex mix of factors. One major driver is habitat loss as we convert more and more land for agriculture, urban development, and other human activities. Then there's pollution, especially from pesticides and herbicides, and of course climate change is playing a role, disrupting insect life cycles and making them more vulnerable to diseases.
It's like a perfect storm of threats for our UPSC aspirants. How does this connect to their exam preparation?
Think about the implications for food security, biodiversity loss, the impact on ecosystem services, and the ethical considerations of human activities affecting the natural world. These are all relevant themes for the UPSC syllabus.
It's a reminder that everything is interconnected. Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about something positive. The rise of women in STEM fields. We're seeing more and more women pursuing careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, breaking down barriers and making groundbreaking contributions.
It's a positive trend, not just for gender equality, but for scientific progress as a whole. Having more diverse perspectives in STEM fields leads to more creative problem solving and ultimately better outcomes.
What's driving this positive change? Why are we seeing more women entering STEM fields now?
There's been a lot of effort to promote STEM education for girls, highlighting the exciting career opportunities and showcasing the achievements of successful women in STEM. We're also seeing organizations, universities, and companies implementing policies to create more supportive and inclusive environments for women in STEM.
So it's a combination of encouraging girls to pursue their passions and creating structures that support their success for our UPSC aspirants. This is a great example of how social change intersects with economic development and technological advancement, all key themes for the exam.
Exactly. It's about understanding how different forces shape society and the implications for policymaking.
Now let's talk about something that's both fascinating and a bit daunting: artificial intelligence, or AI. It seems like AI is everywhere these days, from healthcare and transportation to finance and entertainment.
AI is definitely a hot topic, and for good reason. It's rapidly evolving and its potential applications are vast. But it's important to remember that AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
That's a good point. What are some of the potential benefits of AI that we're already seeing?
In healthcare, AI is being used to develop new diagnostic tools, personalized treatment plans, and even assist with surgery and transportation. We're seeing AI powering self-driving cars and optimizing traffic flow. And in finance, AI is being used to detect fraud and manage investments.
It sounds like AI has the potential to revolutionize countless industries, but there are also concerns, right?
Of course, one major concern is job displacement as AI systems become more sophisticated. They may be able to perform tasks that were previously done by humans, leading to job losses in certain sectors.
And it's not just about jobs. There are also ethical concerns about bias, privacy, and even the potential for AI to surpass human intelligence and become a threat to humanity.
Those are all valid concerns. It's crucial that we develop and deploy AI responsibly, addressing these ethical considerations and ensuring that it is used for good.
So it's a complex and evolving field full of both potential and peril for our UPSC aspirants. This is a topic that could pop up anywhere in the syllabus, from ethics and governance to economics and technology.
Exactly. It's about understanding the transformative potential of AI, analyzing its impact on society, and being able to articulate the ethical and policy considerations surrounding its development and deployment.
And that wraps up part 3 of our March 4th deep dive into current affairs. We've covered a lot of ground today, everything from the global rise of obesity to the exciting world of Project Lion and the complex ethical considerations surrounding gene editing. We even touched upon the future of work and the ever-evolving landscape of AI.
Remember, UPSC aspirants staying informed is key, and keeping a critical eye on these trends will serve you well in those exams.
Until next time, happy studying.